Hello and welcome to a new Google Sheets project in Practical Sheets. Today we're going to do a stock management system or inventory system, however you want to call it. Basically, it is a system where you input your sales and input your purchases. Finally, you have a summary where you subtract purchases from the sales of each of your products. Normally, it is used for sales and purchases, but not necessarily. You can have, for example, I can have the inventory of things in my office. It is not necessary to link it to sales and purchases. Later, we're going to do a project specifically for sales, but this works very well for sales and purchases. In my Spanish channel, many people have asked me to link it to invoices and sales, but I'm going to do this in a different project. This is just going to be focused on the inventory part. Of course, the cost is very important, so it's going to be, we're going to take it into account also, but just for you to keep in mind. So there are many ways of doing this and many tools for doing it, from specialized software to building it in software such as Excel or Sheets. And even if we think about Sheets, we can do it in a lot of ways. This is the first way. I'm already planning how we're going to do it with Google Forms, maybe with HTML forms and others. So this is going to be the simplest way. We're going to add Google Apps Script in some point. For starters, as I always try to do in my projects, we're going to keep it simple and then but try to do a very lean structure that then can have new layers of complexity with Google Apps Script, with Google Forms, with other things. So let's start with the basic template for stock management. The basic template should have at least 3 or 4 sheets or elements. The first sheet is going to be where we keep our products. The second one is going to be where we have inputs and our outputs. We can have it in the same sheet or in a different sheet. One for input, one for output. And the third required sheet is where we have our stock, where we subtract the inputs from the output. Then we can add a lot of things. We can add some adjustments and many other things. But with these 3 initial sheets, we can have our first stock. So let's begin. We're going to name this product. We're going to name this input output. Let's try to do it at the beginning with just 1 sheet. Try to keep it as simple as possible. And the third one will be stock. Again, in each of these sheets, we could have it as complex as we can with a lot of fields, but let's start with the most basic and then we can begin to add complexity as we go along. In product, we're going to have a reference, product, and that's it. We could have we could have a price, a description, a color, a lot of things. But with this, we could even have only the product. Sometimes the reference, depending on the type of products you handle, is redundant. But in many other cases, especially when you have a lot of products, it's very useful to have the reference, or where the product description or the product name is very long. So we're going to start with these 2. The next one, in input-output, there are a lot of ways of doing this. I always start first with the reference, then with the product. But many of the comments in my stock management in Spanish tell me that it's better for them many times to have the product first, because it is easier to locate the product by name than by reference. But in many other cases, for example, I have a client that scans the barcode of the product to do the inventory. So it's better for them to have the reference first, but we can have it both ways. In this case, we're going to say if it's an input or an output, or there are in the classic way, where you handle it with a notebook. Sometimes there are 2 columns, the input column or the output column, and you could have it in any of those. I think we could handle it here, and then we'll have the units and the date. That's it. We don't need anything else initially, and the stock we'll handle it later. Let's begin with our products. We're going to sell rock paraphernalia or rock t-shirts or rock articles, just because I'm a big music fan. So let's say this is our t-shirt 001, and it's going to call Foo Fighters t-shirt. Now let's create some other products. TS002. This will be Tenacious D t-shirt. This will be TS. Okay, some rock band clothing. That's it. We're going to start with this. One of the reasons that I have my product in a different sheet from the input and output is that I can then select the product here where when I'm going to do an input and output. So what I need to do is have in this first version of the file, we're going to do this manually. We're going to enter the inputs and the outputs manually in each of the rows. So for making it easier to input the data, we're going to have here a drop-down where I can select the reference. So here I'm going to select. There are many ways of doing it. I could select all my column with Ctrl-Shift down, then go to data, data validation, list from a range. I'm going to select the range from my product sheet, start on the A2 cell, go down again with Ctrl-Shift down one time and two times, or I could just erase this final number, say OK. I could reject the input so we can avoid that there are mistakes and that we input references that are not in the product sheet. So let's give it save. And for some reason, it did work. So here I have all my references. I don't want to have another drop-down for the product, or I don't want to bring it manually. I could erase this product. I actually don't need it. But it is more for a guide for the one that is for me as a manager or administrator to know which reference is for each product. This is why I told you at the beginning that sometimes you don't need the ref. Just with the product you can handle. But it is for just the reference is more to have a unique number that doesn't depend on spaces, on upper letters, lower letters. It's a unique, it's like a password. It's an alphanumeric word that doesn't have spaces, that sometimes doesn't have special characters, and that has like an order. It's like this. Here I have TS001, 002, 003, and I know this is my reference. This is why references are used, because it is like the key, like the ID of each of the products that doesn't depend on phrases, on words, on spaces. But the name of the product is a very nice indicator for the person that is filling out this file. So we're going to do it with a formula. The formula, there are a lot of ways of doing it. The easiest way is with the traditional VLOOKUP. With VLOOKUP, I choose the reference I wrote in the A column and look it up in these two columns of the product sheet. Then I use the semicolon, because in Latin America we do it like this, but actually in the US and the UK it's with a comma. So, but Sheets is very intelligent and it detects what is your original configuration and it fixes it. Then I'm going to say that I want to bring whatever is in the column 2 that you found. And then this final argument is for an exact search. You almost 99% of the cases you leave it in 0. That's it. Here we have an error because there's nothing here. So if I bring any of the references, it'll automatically bring the product name. There are a couple of ways of bringing this down. The most known and traditional way is just to copy and paste the formula. So I'm going to do Ctrl-Shift down and Ctrl-D to duplicate my VLOOKUP formula. However, I don't like this. This doesn't look nice, this error. So I could wrap up this VLOOKUP in a ifError function. This function tells Sheets that if this VLOOKUP is an error, then bring any other thing that I want. Here, I just want to have a space or a blank cell if there is an error. So again, I'm going to do Ctrl-Shift down and Ctrl-D to duplicate the formula. Or I could have done Ctrl-C, Control Shift down, and then Control V to paste. And if you're in a Mac, then it's Command C and Command V. Okay. Here, I need to know if it's an input or an output, so I can have very simple drop down. Again, here in data validation, I'm going to do the list of items, and the items will be input, comma, output. I'm going to reject again, save, and I have the two options, Control Shift down, Control D, that's it. Finally, I'm going to have these units. Normally, this is going to be a whole number, so we can do a very easy validation. I'm going to select everything, Control Shift down, data validation. Here I can have a number that is greater than 0 and reject input if it's not a number. But again, I could do in a future video, we could have a more robust validation where I can only allow all numbers. And for the date, I'm going to do the same, Control Shift down, data validation, and I'm going to make sure this is a date. Reject input if it's not a date. That's it. I'm going to select the F column, go to the Z column with Control Shift, with Control right, and then do Control Alt minus. This will delete the column, so it looks nicer. This is one of the things I like better in Sheets than Excel, is that you can do this and it just looks nicer. It's just it doesn't add up anything, but it looks good for me. Okay, so I already have my input output. I can do some, let's say I bought, or this could be sales and purchases if it's better for you. Just we'll leave it like that for the moment. Let's say I bought 5 Mastodon t-shirts the 1st of September. Then I bought some Foo Fighters t-shirt, say 7 the next day. And then a couple of Tenacious D t-shirts the next day. And here, this could be popular, so I'm going to buy 10 this. Okay, and then I'm going to have some outputs. I sold one of these 1 month later. I also sold one of these, and I sold 2 of these. Okay, we could, with this, again, we could do a lot of things. We could do some validations, that the date that I cannot do any sales if there is no input, some messages. Again, this is the first template, the first draft. And then we, depending on your specific company, specific project, we could start doing some modifications. Now we're going to the interesting part, that is the stock. How we're going to do the stock. There are many ways, again, of doing this. We could bring all the products, but here I only have 5 products. But what if I have 100 products? And of the 100 products that I have registered, I only have 20 where I have bought something. So it's not efficient to have the 100 products because I only have 20 where I have had some input. So I think that the way to do this is to look to for which of the products I have had some input, and these are the ones that I'm going to list in my stock, not the output, because I'm assuming that I cannot do output for a product that I haven't done an input or a purchase. Okay, so this we can do it in a couple of ways. Let's have a here product, and here I'm going to do this with a filter function. The filter function is going to bring me a list or a range filtered by any condition I want. So the range I want to bring is this one, the A2, here I cannot see it, A2 to A, to the last row I find, and I'm going to filter by this input output, C2 to C, where the value is equal to input. That's it. That's all I need. So here I have these 4 references where I have bought something. This third one, I haven't ever bought anything, so I'm not going to bring it right now to my stock. But if I had purchase in any moment, input to, automatically it will bring it here. Okay. I'm not going to call this product, but ref. Again, we're going to bring the product with the same VLOOKUP function. This exact same VLOOKUP function is going to work well for me here. And it's autofilling it, but I want to bring it to the last row. So I'm going to copy, Control-C, Control-Shift down, and Control-V to paste. And here I can verify that I have the formula. Now, what I need to know is, and this is the most important thing in a stock management system, is that I need to know how many inputs I have had of these or purchases, and how many outputs of every one of each one of the products, and then subtract it to know how many I have left in my warehouse. So I'm going to have here input, and then output, and finally stock. We're going to do this with a SUMIFs. This function is very useful for summarizing things. And for dashboards, what it does is that sums a specific value. In this case, we're going to sum these units. And it sums it, or it adds it up depending on some conditions. So the first condition is going to be the reference. So the reference should be this reference. And the second condition is going to be that this column C is input. And that's it. And if I drag it down, I can see that it brings how many t-shirts I have bought from each of these. I don't know why this is not working. It shouldn't be 0. Let me see. Here it should be 2. I don't know why here it brought the products A2. It's just A2. That's it. This is why I had it a wrong number. Now it's correct. Now what I'm going to do is Control-Shift down, Control-C, Control-Shift down, and Control-V. But again, I don't like the 0. So what I'm going to do is wrap the SUMIFs in a if function that says that if this cell is blank, just leave this other one blank also. If not, do the SUMIFs. Again, I'm going to drag it down with Control-C, Control-Shift down, and Control-V. And for the output, it's exactly the same thing. This is the good thing of having it in the same sheet. The only thing it's going to change is that this is not input but output. Let's put this, even though these Google Sheets formulas are not case sensitive, it just looks better if it's put this way. And finally, I just need to subtract C2 minus D2 like this is suggesting. So let's accept the suggestion and we can bring it down. Again, I don't like this 0, so we're going to do the same. If A2 equals to blank, leave it blank. Let's copy it. If not, just do the subtraction. Again, we're going to drag it down, Control-Shift down 2 times, Control-D. And here it is. This is our stock. Let's do some tests. Let's say I sold another tool t-shirt. It should update automatically. So here there are 2 more. And if I add a new product, and I have it here, I can input some more. Let's say I bought 5, but I haven't sold any of this. I have it here. It adds up automatically the new inputs and outputs. This is what I want, to automatize this. The only data I have to fill out on a day-to-day basis is this one. And if I have new product, I just add them here. I think this is it. This is a very simple, bare bones inventory system, and we can build upon this. We can have a lot of things changed. For example, we can add the costs. This could be an important item to us to add. We could separate. Maybe some of you think that it's better to separate the inputs from the outputs in different sheets, the purchases from the sales. We could eliminate the product base if you want. We could just add it here and do some validations that when you add a new one, I could add here the TS007, and in the next ones, I already have it in my validations. This could also be simpler if you prefer. The sky's the limit. We could also have a form, another sheet where I add each of these rows, because right now this looks good, but when I have 200 rows and I have to go down, and it could prove a little bit difficult if you're in a cell phone, if you have to do the input of the output in a mobile phone. So it could prove to be a bit difficult. So I could do it with Google Forms, with an HTML form. There are a lot of ways when we can continue this project. So just let me know what you think, and in a couple, we could do some new modifications or optimizations to this project. So thank you so much. As always, you can find the template in the Patreon page, and please subscribe. Please subscribe and activate the notification setting, and just let me know what you think or your suggestions. See you next time.